Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday to all. Welcome to the FEDC Legislative Playbook Series, Part 2. That's Agency, Engagement, and Legislative Budget Requests. As all of you know, FEDC's priorities and pillars are educate, advocate, and connect. And some of you may know that my top priority this year and beyond is advocacy. In order to secure the future of economic development in our state, I believe we need to fundamentally change how economic developers interact with our elected officials at every level in our state. It's no secret that economic development in Florida has had an interesting history. And in part one of our series, we overviewed some of that history of economic development policymaking in Florida and how our system works. Today, we'll dive deeper into various agencies and legislative budget requests and how to get them done. Now I'm going to kick it over to our Vice Chair of Advocacy, Jeff Hendry. Jeff, thanks so much for your leadership. Take it away.
Thank you, Casey. Just again, as I want to reiterate from the last webinar, just really excited about this series, just bringing not only a lot of historical and expertise into the process, but frankly, today dealing with really practical issues with a number of our gubernatorial agencies and the way this process actually works within their agencies in the broader scope. So with that said, our time's limited. I want to introduce our moderator for the day, Darrick McGhee, and Darrick's doing a tremendous job working with our team, and just thankful and blessed to have him leading this effort. And so, Darrick, I want to turn it over to you and look forward to hearing from our panelists.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being on today. We really appreciate you. Allow me, if I may, to do introductions of our three panelists, and then we're going to delve into some questions. First, we have Dr. Georgia Lorenz, who is the president of Seminole State College, and also she is the chair of the Council of Presidents for the State College System. Good morning, Madam President. Thank you for being on with us today. And then next we have a buddy of mine, Adam Calloway. Adam is Chief of Staff at the Florida Commerce. He's held several roles there, but he's currently Chief of Staff. They're working hand in hand with Secretary Kelly and doing some amazing work. Let me say thank you to Adam for also making time to be on today. And then lastly, we have Dan Fitzpatrick. Dan is the Assistant Secretary and Chief Strategy Officer at the Florida Department of Transportation. Part of his role is he's responsible for leading the modal and planning divisions of FDOT, which includes airports, seaports, spaceports, transit, and freight components. So Dan, thank you also for being on with us. Greatly appreciate each of you. Let's jump in so we can maximize our time. If I can kind of just set the tone and for the audience, we have some questions we're going to ask each of our panelists pertaining to their jurisdictional places. And then the latter part, around 11:45 or so, we're going to pause then and take questions from each of you, those who have questions, whether you want to put it in the chat or raise your hand. We'll make time for that in that regard. We will be done with the full webinar by 12 noon. So we want to make sure everyone knows that. We're going to jump right in. I do have an opening question for each of the panelists, hoping they will be willing to answer it. So as we're looking at the 2026 session, which begins on January 13th of next year, would you mind just sharing from your perspective, Madam President, from Seminole State College, Adam from Commerce, Dan from DOT, what goes into you all creating your budget requests and your priorities going into session? Madam President, ladies first.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to participate today. And thank you, Casey, for reaching out in the spirit of partnership and recognizing the role that the Florida State College system plays in economic development. I think it's an important partnership. So we have, as hopefully you all know, 28 state colleges that serve regions around our state. And I hope that each of you have a relationship with your local state college. The Council of Presidents, or the 28 presidents across the system, we meet monthly throughout the year. So the legislative budget request and legislative issues in general are sort of constantly being discussed and evaluated. And we really try to balance several factors when we're talking about the legislative budget request. We generally need new recurring financial resources, and those needs extend beyond what we typically ask for in the legislative budget request. And we have a Council of Business Affairs that really helps us to understand those financial needs across our system. Another very significant factor for us to consider is the Department of Education's legislative budget request. So we meet with Commissioner Kamoutsas every other week, and we meet with Chancellor Hebda, now Chancellor Maros, on a regular basis. So they know our perspective, we know their perspective, and they take our feedback on their legislative budget request, and then we really try to strike some alignment. We also take into account, the general sense of the budget. Of course, this year we're hearing a lot about projected deficits in the next 2 years that, are a priority for our leaders. We look at trends from prior years, what was funded, what worked in terms of advocacy, what are the priorities of the legislature, and how can we align with those? And in addition to those operational funds, we're always very focused on trying to restore repair and maintenance dollars, which we have not received since, except for 1 year, where we got COVID relief dollars since 2018. And our infrastructure is aging. So that continues to be a priority that we discuss both with the Department of Education as well as the legislature. So that's at the system level. Then each individual college also develops essentially their own legislative priorities. And typically that has to do with new buildings, remodeling, or other kinds of projects that are appropriate for the public education capital outlay funds. And colleges advocate for those individually while they're also advocating for the system-wide legislative budget request.
Thank you, Madam President. Adam, bring you in with the same question from Commerce perspective. What's the process of going into creating your budget request? And while you're speaking, can you kind of speak also, Adam, to some of the priorities that's then your major divisions of community development, workforce, and business development?
Absolutely, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Like the good doctor said, our process is not very different. We don't have as many partners that we have to coordinate with, but we do go through a lot of meetings internally and externally to identify our ongoing priorities and programs, any new priorities or programs that we want to implement, and crafting all of our requests on data. It's a data-driven process for us. Going into this upcoming session, to your question there, Darrick, looking at our top priorities, Job Growth Grant Fund is obviously one of the top priorities there. We've asked for $50 million for that one for the upcoming year. In community development, a couple of our priorities there are maintaining our appropriations authority to continue our housing recovery programs and our broadband programs. We're actually this year requesting the last bit of authority to finish our capital projects fund and get that fully out the door and obligated. And then obviously RIF is a priority for us, the Rural Infrastructure Fund grant program. We're looking to get $25 million for that one this year. In both job growth and rural infrastructure, in fact, pretty much across all of our programs, we routinely annually see, especially for those recurring ones, far more in applications and project proposals than we can fund. To date, I think since 2019, we've received more than $900 million in requests for the Job Growth Grant Fund program alone. And compare that to roughly $250-ish million in appropriations over that same time period. So it's definitely there's not a lack of projects out there. So it's a highly competitive process, and we do we push hard to get as much funding each year as we can. For workforce, one of our high priorities is the ongoing funding for the FL WINS project, which is the no wrong door entry for workforce development, essentially providing a one-stop shop where a Floridian who's in a spot where they either want to upskill, reskill, or they're looking to retain self-sufficiency or re-achieve self-sufficiency, can go into this system and through that portal access services at DCF, education, commerce, other partners. So crafting that budget to keep that program operational and going forward. Along with our incumbent worker training program and our quick response training programs, which we have that as it's in our base budget as a recurring item, and we get about $6.5 million across the two of those programs to provide good training programs around the state, help employers come into the state and pivot their training and to keep their workforce skilled and ready for the next challenge.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. And Dan, I'm gonna bring you in as well from the Department of Transportation perspective. Can you speak to you all's budget process preparing for session and there's some priorities you all are looking at for 2026?
Hey, good morning. Thank you very much for having me this morning, join this panel. And probably the most major part of our annual budget request is our work program, which is our tentative 5-year work program. And that process starts about 10 years out for major roadway projects. And then it's a pipeline over time. And once we get to the 5-year, that's when we start to marry up estimated revenues that are based on the revenue estimating conference with project needs. And then we start moving projects around based on new estimates that are coming in. And sometimes the estimates are lower, sometimes they're higher. And we're constantly moving around projects to make sure that they stay in the pipeline. And that's when project partners can really see their projects coming and start getting ready for them. And we'll do it in phases as well. For roadway projects, we'll do design, right of way, and construction, and we'll have those programmed in different years. And at the local level, communities will see those regularly if they're part of a metropolitan planning organization, and they'll see the 10-year and the 5-year. And over time, if you keep on going to meetings, you'll see your projects getting expedited over time. And the work program really is the gold standard in project delivery globally. We go all over the globe. We go all over the country. We talk to other state DOTs regularly, and they're really envious of our work program in Florida and how our budget is fiscally responsible thanks to Governor DeSantis, and the fact that we can keep projects going over time and move them around and continue to deliver, and we don't get held up. People around the state of Florida should be really thankful when you're taking a look at what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. Thankfully, we don't rely on, year-to-year funding to get our projects done, because they get held up and you don't know if your project's ever going to happen. And so how we do it in Florida is the gold standard. So this year, our total budget was $15.1 billion, and that includes $13.7 billion in work program funding. And on my side of the house, the modal and the planning side, you'll see that in $120 million in seaport infrastructure projects, $254 million in aviation projects, and $90 million in spaceport projects. So just to give you some examples, probably the most fun one is last year, Florida in 2024, Florida saw 93 launches take flight from the Space Coast. And this year we're on track for 150 launches. And so how that work program works for the space side, just as an example, is the legislature puts money in buckets, and there's four different buckets, some for vertical infrastructure around the state, and then also for some common use infrastructure. So from And so we can tee up the infrastructure so that it's ready when it's needed. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dan. Madam President, I'm gonna bring you back in. I'm gonna ask you a twofold question. So because I think the first question answer is gonna respond to the next one. So I know you and Beth had conversations regarding East State College, and you kind of explained to us the council and then each individual college. But you've also seen an increase in enrollment, about 7%. And so I know you all are jointly asking for an increase in funding. So if you can speak to that, just from the enrollment perspective, what you all are seeing on the grounds at your state college, why the ask for the increase? And the second part question is, can you also speak to, once you answer the first part, can you speak to just how state colleges are playing a critical role in training for jobs of the future? I know you guys do an amazing work there, and I think that'd be really important to share what you all see from your student body, but also how you're playing a role in that training.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you for that vote of confidence. Yes, we also have estimating conferences multiple times per year. And at the most recent one, which I think was in August, the data revealed that we had another 7.2% enrollment growth over the prior year. And we experienced more than a 4% increase in completions. And our industry certifications went up more than 8% compared to the prior year. So all of this is focused on preparing students for the workforce, getting them into the education and training, helping them get those industry certifications. In fact, we had a 5.6% increase in nursing, which is another big workforce need. So all of that good result is helped and fueled by investment in our system. And as I mentioned before, we're very fortunate to have an excellent partnership with the Department of Education and the Division of Florida Colleges. And so typically, historically, the Department of Education's LBR has come out somewhere between $0 and $50 million for the Florida college system. This year, they came out at $70 million, which is the highest that we've seen. And I think that signals two things. One is acknowledgement of our need for new recurring fiscal resources. And second, confidence in the system and what we've been able to produce. 3 sessions ago, I think it was, 3 sessions from 2026, $100 million was invested in our system, and we have seen that pay off. You asked why I think enrollment is going up. I think that people recognize the wide variety of opportunities that we offer. We have the traditional associate in arts degree, which is the first 2 years of a bachelor's degree, and students can either stay and complete a bachelor's degree with their home state college or transfer to one of our universities. So that's a very traditional route. We do have growing bachelor's degrees at the state colleges. Seminole State now has 11 bachelor's degrees that are very workforce oriented. We also have associate in science degrees that are very workforce oriented, and then those industry certifications. And I think, every state college serves a very unique region, and each of us are required and know that it's in our own best interest to really attend to what is needed in our region and what the emerging industry trends are and those that are sort of foundational. One of the tools that we've used most recently is the Florida Council 100's Beyond the Sunshine report, which had some great quantitative and qualitative data that they generated through focus groups around the state to help inform our work, to ensure that we're producing students or graduates, I guess I should say, in areas that are in highest need. And each of those workforce programs also has an industry advisory board. Those are professionals, leaders in whatever the field is. And we ask them to be our partners in ensuring that our curriculum is not just preparing students for today, but preparing students for the future in that industry. So we try to remain very nimble and responsive to our employer partners so that our students can excel on day one and continue to excel years into their career.
Madam President, a follow-up question, just I'm thinking about many of the state colleges over the years have changed from the community college to state college. Can you just
Yes.
speak for our audience to understand why that was happening across the board and what actually comes with that name change?
Yes, and I think last year with the change for Hillsborough, we are now all named state colleges. And really, it was the addition of the workforce-oriented bachelor's degrees that prompted that change. So as that has continued to develop in scope, one by one, we've changed our names to State College, or like Valencia College is just Valencia College. It doesn't have state in the name, but none of us have community in our name anymore. Now, I don't want that to be interpreted as somehow we're not still very keen on serving our local community. That
Right.
is part of our core mission. So I don't want the name change to indicate that at all.
Thank you, Madam President. Adam, I want to bring you back in. You gave us great detail on like Job Growth Grant Fund and what the request is going to be for 2026. I want to ask you a question as it relates to local EDOs. Many of them are on the Zoom right now. Any specific initiatives you think the local EDOs can help inform or support? And then to add to that, are there any new programs you think the department is considering where you see those local partnerships can be helpful?
Well, we recently went through and we're finalizing a process where we have established MOUs with every major EDO in every county around the state. So that laying that groundwork is sort of a fundamental basis for just encouraging the communication between us and the local EDOs. Really, any initiatives that we can support are going to from the EDOs be largely grassroots driven. So if we hear of things at the local level that align with what we do as an agency and what we're doing as a state, then we're always happy to support and lend assistance. And we can lend assistance in any number of ways. I make the joke we're an agency that gives away money. But it is true. We strategically deploy our resources, but we're more than that. We have more than just financial assistance for local governments, state colleges, technical centers, et cetera. We have data here. We have our Bureau of Workforce Statistics and Economic Research. We have a very big footprint on our website with their publications and their expertise and the sort of the resources they have. So we can assist on data. We can assist on technical assistance. All of our divisions, all of our programs have a technical assistance component where any EDO, any partner, any business from around the state can call us and say, hey, what do you think about this? What is this? How does this language in a comprehensive plan affect my ability to develop a parcel? How can I deploy these quick response training dollars to benefit, to benefit my workforce and pivot there? So pretty much anything that an EDO brings us, we can inform and support. Right now, and Beth is aware of this. We're working sort of a new program, not really a funded through our appropriation, but something that we've taken on as this department. Darrick, you're aware. Other listeners in the webinar may not be. We absorb a lot of different initiatives and programs that align with economic development, but you wouldn't consider necessarily to be economic development. And we absorb other initiatives, programs, policies, things like that, just to administer and drive forward. One of those things that we've taken on is the next round of the opportunity zones, which I'm sure everybody's heard of. So we've volunteered and sort of taken a point position on the opportunity zones discussion. And we've started having the conversations. We've convened a working group to start, let's answer some questions. Let's find out what's going on at the local level. Let's start identifying, projects that would be in those prospective new opportunity zone locations that are going to have that long-term economic impact there. So that is definitely one that the local EDOs can inform and support on, and it's one that we're actively implementing now.
Thank you for that, Adam. Paul, before I get to the next question for the next panelist, as we mentioned, in a few minutes, we're going to take questions from those of you in the panel. So those of you who are attending, and whether that's you coming off the microphone, asking a question, or putting in the chat. I know Troy's already put a comment in the chat. Troy, I'll get to that question at the appropriate time. So please know that I did see that question that you're asking. I want to make sure everybody does know that. So if you have a question you have in mind, you can put it in the chat now, and we'll read it at the appropriate time, or you can prepare yourself when we get to that moment. Dan, I want to ask you a question. Last session, the department had a huge piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1662, that encompassed a lot of policy that's in it. Would you mind just sharing to the audience some of the things that was in that bill, and how implementation is going with that?
Hey, thank you. Great question. Last year was an exciting year for our transportation bill, and it's a rare opportunity when we get to put as many things in there as we need to move the department and the state forward. And last year was a really great example of that. Probably 4 things to hit on. The Department of Transportation is a $15 billion organization, and we have probably about $22 billion worth of contracts, and we put out about $45 million a day in paid invoices. And so we're really, if we were a Fortune 500 company, we'd be well positioned on that list. And so we're taking more of a look like the Department of Transportation is a major business. And the first one is that we renamed some of the assistant secretary positions. And my position was previously titled Assistant Secretary of Strategic Development. And we changed it in the statutes to be Chief Strategy Officer. And for my position, why we did that is because I'm over the modes. So airports, seaports, rail, transit, space, and planning. And those are really the business development arms of the Department of Transportation. So that's why we named the position Chief Strategy Officer. And then our, along the same lines, our Assistant Secretary of Engineering, we changed that to Chief Operating Officer. And then our financial officer, Chief Financial Officer, was previously the Assistant Secretary of Finance and Administration. So we're more aligning like we're a business, and that's already had some positive changes. We're more business focused more now than ever. We have the pedal to the metal on looking for efficiencies and really making sure that we're investing every single dollar efficiently. And so moving forward, that's one exciting step in being more efficient and being more business oriented, especially for our customers that are coming to the state or already in the state. Second one was creating the Florida Transportation Research Institute, and we're actively working on that one. We've had a number of conversations with colleges and universities around the state. We had one just yesterday. Third point, we changed chapter 311.07, which is the Seaports chapter. And we added eligible projects to include space, shipbuilding and manufacturing for spaceport related industry. So we made those eligible for state funding. And so they might have been eligible before, but we really wanted to emphasize that space and shipbuilding is really important. Shipbuilding is really important in DC right now, and we wanted to align with national priorities to bring manufacturing of shipbuilding to Florida. That's also been really important for kickstarting that conversation. I know just for everyone's benefit, the Department of Transportation and Florida Commerce have been working really closely together to make sure that we're putting together some good packages out there for potential shipbuilders that want to expand their footprint in Florida, or or for foreign direct investment. And that's been a really great partnership that we have going on with Florida Commerce right now, and it's been really productive. And probably the fourth one is requiring airports across the state to provide the Department of Transportation with opportunities for laydown area during declared states of emergencies. And one of the things that we identified last year, with the 3 major hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, is just the need to have laydown space, to have a point for utility crews and responders to meet up and have supplies stored. And we've already entered into a number of agreements with airports around the state and identified some space. And we really appreciate how responsive the airports have been. We had a number of those agreements in place, within a month after the legislation being signed into law. And those are the main ones. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. Madam President and Adam, I'm actually going to ask a question that I would like both of you guys to respond to. Is dealing with the REACH Act. Madam President, I would love to hear from you on the impact of the REACH Act to the college system, which relates to training and delivery. And then Adam, you're on the Credential Review Committee. So anything anything you want to share with those who are listening who may not know anything about the act and all that great work that's being done there. But Madam President, if you wouldn't mind speaking to this to REACH Act and its impact on the college system. If you want to speak on the master credentialing list, you can do that as well, but I'll give you a chance to.
Sure. Well, the REACH Act, I think, has been really positive. Here in Central Florida, we have not experienced realignment of career source. So I know that some colleges, their region has been part of the realignment. I've not had that experience. We, again, our strong leadership and partnerships with Senior Chancellor O'Farrell at the Department of Education has been really helpful, sort of shepherding us all through the process. I will say that the parts of the REACH Act that impact the colleges, we were already doing some of the work in alignment with the master credential list. We were already participating in a career technical education audit to ensure, the purpose of which is to ensure we don't have duplicative programs sort of right on top of each other, that our programs are meeting workforce needs and not oversaturating the market, that we're in alignment with those workforce needs. And that's a lot of what the analysis of the master credential list does as well. And we've been through, I think, 3 years of sort of development of the analysis for the master credential list. But I feel like that work is really in alignment with work that we were already doing, particularly related to the CTE audit. The one sort of a hiccup with the master credential list is there have been some programs slated for removal that we, as colleges serving different regions, want to continue to advocate to retain on the list. For a program to be on the list, there need to be a sufficient number of openings, and it needs to deliver a satisfactory wage for the graduate of the program. So there are some things that have real social value, like early childhood education, which may not always hit that wage marker. And then there are also, like in our area, for example, paramedic ended up on the list for potential removal. But in talking with our local area, we have the chance to appeal that because there are actually a sufficient number of openings. So you have the chance to appeal. Another really important thing that the REACH Act created was the Open Door Grant. This essentially is, to simplify it, a financial aid program for students who want to participate in short-term workforce credentials, and it can cover their costs And typically those are credentials that can get them out into the workforce in a high demand area quickly. And it gives them the financial means to do so. We are currently, again, working with the Department of Education to advocate for that to be a recurring grant program. This year, in this year's budget, it is non-recurring. So we really would like to see that restored in future budget years. So those are just a few of the things, but the REACH Act, I think, is really a positive, and we've been happy to, continue to refine what we offer at the colleges in alignment with that. And CareerSource is always a great partner, as is the Department of Commerce on all of these issues.
Adam, once you come on in and just kind of speak to, you've been on the credential review team for a while. Can you just speak to just the REACH Act and all the great work that's being done?
I'll tell you, Dr. Lorenz knocked it out of the park. She stole a lot of my talking points that I was going to go with, because it really is. It's a framework there that's now statutory, and it just memorializes and implements a lot of what was already going on in a more cohesive fashion. I would say here that the REACH Act did obviously give us the FL WINS program, Workforce Integrated System. So it did give us that, which we're working through right now. I mentioned that program earlier, and we're making really good progress. By our anticipated completion date of September 30 of next year, we hope to have integrated all of the major systems that are in scope between us, Department of Education, CareerSource Florida, and Department of Children and Families. Now, the REACH Act also gave us the REACH office within the executive office of the governor. And I'll tell you, more than just about anything else within that act, I appreciate what the REACH office is and what it represents and what it does. And it truly is the hub, a central hub of coordination amongst all of our workforce training agencies, anybody with a workforce training component, the colleges, the universities. It is just really good to have that linchpin right there, and to kind of direct and coordinate and really bring all the people into a room, because in a state the size of Florida, even though we have a remarkably small government, we do have an extraordinary number of partners, public and private, education and workforce. And the efforts of the REACH office coming through the REACH Act really have been a fantastic resource in just getting things done.
Thank you for that, Adam. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're a little ahead of schedule. We're at the point where we want to take some questions from you, the audience. And so if you want to put a question in the chat and make known who you're phrasing the question to, you can do that. Or if you want to raise your hand, and we'll identify you. There is one question already in the chat that actually came from Troy, and it's for you, Adam. It's two questions, actually. One was, has the department announced awardees for the Community Planning Technical Assistance Grants for fiscal year 25? And then what's the likelihood that program will be offered again in 26?
So Troy, it's a good question. We have not yet announced the awardees. I imagine that will be forthcoming very, very shortly. As you know, we get about $1.5 million in appropriations every year for that program. That equates to somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 awards any given year. We tend to use our community planning technical assistance grants as sort of that lead into other projects and other developments. So where we can get a community started on a CPTA grant, and then have lay sort of, for lack of a better term, lay the foundation there, and then identify, okay, the next step is for that community to get them into a rural infrastructure or a job growth grant, or to work with Department of Transportation to get some road work done for an area, maybe work with Department of Environmental Protection on some mitigation, maybe work with the local college in the area to understand, okay, well, they've done this planning, this workforce is ready to come in. That workforce is not going to be, that jobs creator is not going to be fully online for a year and a half to 2 years because of construction activities. So we need to start talking to the college immediately to start getting that pipeline of trained workforce going. But as far as the likelihood the program will be offered again in the next fiscal year, we always are going to advocate for it. It's a fantastic program. It does a lot of good work. And if we can really structure it with these communities to be that starting point, we can see some magnificent growth coming off of that. So we're going to push for it.
Thank you for that, Adam. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're open for questions at this point. If you want to put a question in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and come off mute, we'd be happy to have you ask a question. As we're doing that, I do want to ask a question to the three of you, just as we look to the future. Start with you, Madam President. What keeps you up at night, but what is, from the college system perspective, the next year or two or three, what really weighs on you, or that you're focusing on?
Well, Florida higher education has been ranked #1 in the country for 10 years. And we're really proud of that and work hard every day to continue to, produce high quality programs that lead to high quality graduates. I am worried that if we don't continue to invest in our system, that that could slip at some point. We do need new financial resources. So that is a big concern. I know another thing that keeps college presidents and others up at night, and is likely going to be a legislative discussion this year, is campus safety, which also requires some level of investment. But we just had a joint safety summit with the Board of Governors and the state university system. It was their summit that they invited us to attend. And, none of us want to experience the type of incident that Florida State had last April. And campus safety it's always top of mind, and now it's really top of mind.
I appreciate that. I live here in Tallahassee. I remember that day like yesterday. Absolutely. Yep. I'm happy to hear that. Dan, I'm gonna ask you to come off mute, just from a DOT perspective, especially in your role, Dan. What when you think about the molds and things of that nature, are there any concerns that you have, or things you're thinking about the next year or two?
Hey, thank you. Great question. We're thinking about this question a lot right now. And if members of the audience haven't already seen it, Secretary of Transportation Jared Perdue presented to the House TED Committee on October 8th, and really recommend seeing that. There's some slides that go along with it, and it's really important to note that we put every single dollar to work at the Department of Transportation, and we actively prioritize projects, and we make sure that we're investing in the best projects. And if you take a look at our revenues, they've been flat, and there's a graph in the Secretary's presentation that show that, and they're flat for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because of electric vehicles, and we make most of our state transportation trust fund dollars from fuel taxes, or a portion of them. And so, they're flat at the same time that we're seeing continued rapid population growth. And from the modal perspective, where we're at now, is we really started, if you take a look back at population growth, starting in 1970s, it's been pretty steep across the state. And during that same period of time, lots of infrastructure has been developed. And some of that infrastructure, when it was built, had design lives of 30, 40, 50 years. And now, if it was built in 1970, we're at 50 years. And that's a common theme for, modal infrastructure, is we're approaching the end of its design life. And, our modal partners really started taking a look at this about 10 years ago, thanks to Senator Scott when he was governor. And now we're really in a well-tuned machine at looking in Florida at what infrastructure needs to be replaced and starting to plan for that. And our modal partners have done a really good job at identifying infrastructure that needs to be replaced. And so, I'm not going to say it keeps me up at night, but just making sure that we're going to be responsive to the needs of our modal partners as they continue to proactively address their infrastructure over the next 5 and 10 years is going to be really critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Adam, I'll bring you in from a commerce perspective. I mean, is there anything that I shouldn't say keep you up at night, but that you guys are spending a lot of time thinking through, and then over the next year or two that's on you guys' mind?
Really getting our hurricane recovery dollars deployed and getting those housing dollars out the door, and making sure that our Hurricane Ian and our 23-24 storm allocations really get out there and get deployed quickly. The housing funds for me are the most important to get moving and to get spent quickly. Mainly because you're looking at folks with busted roofs. Like the folks that are receiving the benefit of those funds, they're in a bad spot. They haven't received insurance proceeds, or they haven't been able to get major assistance from FEMA. This is a funding of last resort, and want to make sure those people are in safe, sanitary, and decent housing. So that's really the biggest one for me, is making sure that we get those funds into folks' hands and get them back into good living conditions.
And Adam, while you're off mute, we have several questions that have come in. So first one for Job Growth Grant Fund, is there a targeted mix of projects? For example, X percentage for workforce development, X versus X percentage for infrastructure?
There is not. We look at each project on a case-by-case basis, and there are a number of different factors we look at as it comes in. Is it going to have a more immediate impact on job creation versus a more attenuated impact on job creation? Is it supported at the local level by industry, by local government, by stakeholders at the local level? But there's never a targeted mix. It is again that case by case evaluation.
And the second question for you that also came in, looking at the 2026 outlook for how much could be allocated towards Job Growth Grant Fund. You mentioned you guys were asking for $50 million. And you also mentioned Rural Infrastructure Fund. I think it was 25 million for that one. And so is there anything more you want to add to that one? I think you already answered that one, but I want to give you a chance.
No, we're really looking for that 50 and 25 this year. Again, those pots of funding, they have become more and more competitive over the years, simply as a matter of fact of Florida's sustained growth, or profound growth, and just the economic climate here in the state. The rising tide has lifted all boats, and all the boats are now seeing, okay, well, we can get to some economic development. There's funding sources there. There's so many good ideas, so many good projects every year that unfortunately we just can't select them all. So, but yeah, that's that 50 and 25 that we're looking for this year.
Absolutely. The question from Jeff Hendry, I'm going to ask last. I think that's a really good question for me to close out the panel on. But President Lorenz, there's a question here for you. Can you describe or give an example of how economic development organizations can partner with local state colleges and also the K-12 system, develop pipeline programs for targeted industries?
Absolutely. And, I think that the EDO could act as a convener of sorts. I think you'll find very willing partners in your state college and your school districts. And medical technologies is referenced here. I think one of the challenges is in the K through 12 space, students don't know what they don't know. So helping students understand all the different kinds of careers that are available. And, a student who might be interested in medicine but doesn't want to actually engage in patient care might be really interested in medical technologies but not know that they exist. So being a convener and bringing the state college and the school district together, you can find opportunities where you can influence those choices. It's my understanding that students need to start doing career planning in 8th grade. So creating exposure to programs as early as that is important. We have something on our campus called Decision Day, where we bring in all of the seniors and showcase all of our programs that are available to our students. And we have employers standing side by side with our faculty, so students can get an understanding not only of the program that they could pursue, but the job that it might result in. So partnering in a variety of ways is available, and we're all very eager to do that. And I would just say, pick up the phone and call your local president, and they will help you find a way.
Thank you, Madam President. Dan, there's a question here for DOT. Can you discuss your innovation grant program goals for the upcoming year, specifically on AV and FTO initiatives? And even if you have to follow up with that answer, I'll do that as well. But that was for you, Dan.
Thank you for that question. So I think, what were the two grant programs?
Yeah, it was innovation grant program goals for the coming year, and it says specifically interested in support for AV, and then FTO, EVTOL initiatives.
And I don't have I apologize. I don't have great answers for those. I can circle back with the
Yeah,
group.
you can do that. Yeah, you can circle back and I can get it distributed. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So the last question, I think will be a good one to close out the panel, and I'll pass it over to Jeff after we do that. But I want to ask each of you this question, Jeff, and I want to thank you for it. And the question is, what are the most practical ways FEDC as an organization and the local EDOs can truly be effective in advocating for their priorities? And I would love if each of you could provide an answer. I'm going to go on left because Adam, you're the first one on my screen. Again, what are the most practical ways FEDC as an organization and local EDOs can truly be effective in advocating for their priorities?
Communicate. And if you think you're communicating enough, communicate a little bit more. We've got a whole team here at the department from the secretary down, myself included, that are happy to pick up the phone anytime there's a call, a question, any issue, just knock around some thoughts, throw on a tinfoil hat and think of some things. Our business development team liaises very closely with all the EDOs. Heather Schubert, who we've just brought on board as the head of business development, she is intimately familiar with so many folks in the economic development community around the state. So just the best way, tell us what you're doing, talk to us about your issues, throw questions at us, hypotheticals. Let's spitball ideas. If we're in the know, if we have knowledge, that enables us to take that information and then assist in the advocacy for the priorities that align.
Thank you, Adam. Dan, I'll bring you in on that same question. From practical ways FEDC as an organization and the local economic development organizations can be effective in advocating. And I think it's really with the department. Communication, I think, is going to be your same answer, but I want to give you a chance to respond.
This is a question that I'm really passionate about. I'm a professional planner, and you don't really realize the importance of planning until you're trying to, fund your projects. And it all starts with your communities or your organizations and coming together, having a plan and identifying, especially if it's for, infrastructure projects, economic development projects, figuring out what your 5, 10, and 20-year infrastructure needs are or projects are, and then, getting them, circling around your plan, getting it approved, making sure that it's all inclusive as much as possible. And then, figuring out, especially for infrastructure projects, again, how you can get your projects, if they're eligible for, state dollars, into the pipeline. Again, the transportation work program is developed over a 5 and 10-year period, and going to the state doesn't work like the federal government in terms of our infrastructure program. Yes, for discretionary grants, you can apply for those every single year from the federal government. There are some, at the department, we also have some discretionary grants that go on a year by year basis, but the majority of our work program is, 5 and 10 years. So as just to reiterate what Adam said, is communication is really important. Reach out to either your district contacts or to central office. And I'll put my contact information in the chat also for the group. And if you reach out and tell us what you're working on and what your projects are, we can direct you how to get your projects into the pipeline. And just to repeat something I said earlier, is also working with, if your community or organization is part of a metropolitan planning organization, reach out to your MPOs and also ask them how to get into the pipeline as well. And ask around, ask the department, ask your MPOs. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Madam President, I'm gonna let you close us out on that same question, then I'm gonna pass it to Jeff to close us out.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind.
Well, I would say three things. One, as the Council of Presidents, we have found that we are so much more effective in advocacy when we speak with one voice, when we have one clear system message that we are all committed to, and we're all speaking to our local delegation and whomever we speak to when we go up to Tallahassee. And I would say be prepared to speak specifically about the impact. If this is approved, what will be the impact? What am I buying with the state's dollars? And then what was my third thing? Oh, my third thing was relationships. He said communication, communication, communication. I would say build relationships with your senators, your representatives. And it is so important that you have those relationships across the state. So when one of your members needs to call on your local representative, you can help to sort of close that loop for them. We really rely on all of our president's relationships with their local delegation.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking again Dr. Georgia Lorenz, who's the president of Seminole State College and the chair of the Council of Presidents of the State College System, Adam Calloway, who's chief of staff of Florida Commerce, and then Dan Fitzpatrick, who's the assistant secretary and chief strategy officer for the Florida Department of Transportation. In this regard, Jeff, my friend, I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Darrick. And again, I want to extend my thanks to all the panelists. Learned so much, and thank you for your candor. I mean, at the end of the day, that helps us learn about how to be most effective as an organization and as individuals. So thank y'all so much. And as everybody on this call knows, economic development is not just a brick and mortar game. It involves everybody on this call with regard to our education and technical training and commerce and the planning aspects, and certainly our relationships. So thank y'all so much for spending your time with us. Thanks for all the folks that accessed. Just a couple of reminders for the organization and the membership. On October the 30th, we have an FEDC webinar that's going to focus on our Florida Association of Counties partnership, and we're going to be talking about the best practices as it relates to some of the counties and their work with EDOs and elected officials. So please join us. I believe that'd be next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And then our next legislative playbook series, which is what this series focused on. This was the second in the series. Our third will be held on November the 14th at 11 o'clock. And you'll get plenty of notice on that. Hope you'll help us spread the word to all the members throughout the state. And again, thank you all for joining us today. And it's been a great webinar, and just appreciate all the insight from our panelists.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.